Measles is one of the world's most contagious diseases. Walk into a room that was recently occupied by an infected person, and chances are very good that you too will get the disease unless you're vaccinated against it. And fortunately, we have an extremely effective vaccine to guard against measles. And yet this disease is making a comeback. More than 40,000 cases last year in Europe, cases now in the U.S., including Michigan. Let's turn again to Dr. James Baker, the Ruth Dowdone Professor of Immunology at the University of Michigan. Doctor, good to have you back on the program. Your thumbnail, when you start reading these numbers and seeing that this very easily prevented disease is surging back again.
It's incredibly frustrating. This is a disease that was basically totally controlled, but it's so infectious that any drop in vaccinations is important. We've gone from about 97% vaccinated to about 90% vaccinated since COVID. And that doesn't sound that different, but it means that in every schoolroom of 20 kids, 2 aren't vaccinated. And that's why it's being transmitted. Anybody walks into that room, one of those 2 kids will get infected, and we'll have a measles breakdown.
We saw recently the state of Florida has had a number of cases, a lot of them circulating around one elementary school. And we saw the Surgeon General of Florida, his advice is basically going against everything that you would expect, maybe we would be told, is telling parents sort of make up your own mind about whether to send your kids to that school. How's that square with you?
Well, I think the key is that if they're vaccinated, it's fine. The real problem is any child that's not vaccinated, you can't send to that school. You need to require them to be vaccinated because they'll just feed the fire. They'll just cause more measles infections.
Well, and one thing, Doctor, because we've sort of lost touch with measles as being real and around us in our community, this is a dangerous disease. This is not chicken pox.
No. And in fact, you could go blind from this. You can basically destroy someone's intellect. This is a disease that can really damage people's lives, and children, who get this are at great risk.
So as an immunologist, how much do you think the fight over the COVID vaccines is now informing our fight over lots of vaccines like this one that has been so standard for children for so long, the measles vaccine?
I think, sadly, this has really ignited the anti-vax crowd. To be quite honest, these vaccines are crucial to protect people. And young people that don't get these vaccines, if they get infected, they are not going to have normal lives. They are going to be severely compromised. And you just can't allow that to happen.
Yeah. We know that diseases change all the time. For people maybe my age, people in their middle age who were vaccinated maybe in the 60s or 70s or 80s even, how protected are we against measles?
Well, it's amazing. The vaccine basically causes lifelong protection. So not only are you protecting your child, you're protecting the adult that comes from that child. So I think it's a phenomenal vaccine. It's very safe. And the alternative, measles, is a very dangerous disease.
We also have seen a resurgence of syphilis, which is something that you would feel like we read like in old, novels about, about life in Great Britain in the 19th century. Talk a little bit about what's behind the rise in syphilis cases.
Well, this is a little more complex. In the 1990s, we basically had syphilis contained. And there are good treatments for syphilis, antibiotics. But I think people got lackadaisical. Syphilis is not like gonorrhea or herpes, where you have acute symptoms that tell you you're infected. You can carry it for a long period of time. And they call it the great imposter because it can look like so many other diseases that you might not even know you're infected. But long term, it can cause great disability. It can cause mental disorders. It's really a disease that needs to be treated. And I think physicians need to invigorate their screening for it when they see patients. They need to think about syphilis, especially in people that have sex with multiple partners or any type of sexual activity. All these things can transmit syphilis.
And Doc, I've only got about 30 seconds left, but the CDC this past week went along with the new recommendations on what to do if you've got COVID.
Yes, basically we've turned COVID into influenza, flu. I think given the immunity in the population, that's a reasonable thing. Yeah. But again, anyone who's immunocompromised needs to be very careful, needs to avoid people who are infected, and needs to keep from being infected themselves and be treated if they get infected.
Terrific. I got to leave it there. Doctor, as always, thanks so much. Quick break. Back with more in just a minute.